The darkness of space stretched endlessly outside the viewport of the Times Autumn's Promise *. Captain Han Do-yun stood on the bridge, watching the distant stars blur past as his ship traveled through the Velcor expanse. This region belonged to the Thessarian Empire, a civilization so old and powerful that humans were barely noticed by them. Do-yun's mission was simple: deliver Ambassador Park Ji-han to the neutral zone, where humanity would sign its first trade agreement with the Thessarians. Everything seemed routine. The crew moved through their duties with practiced efficiency. Lieutenant Kang Mira sat at her station, monitoring the sensor readings. She was good at her job, sharp and focused. Ambassador Park stood near the captain's chair, reviewing diplomatic protocols on his tablet. The man looked nervous, but that was understandable. This meeting could change everything for humanity's place in the galaxy. Then the alarms screamed to life. Mira's hands flew across her controls. "Captain! Multiple contacts emerging from slipspace. Thessarian warships. 6 of them." Her voice stayed calm, but Do-yun heard the tension beneath it. He moved to her station instantly. The display showed massive vessels surrounding them, each one dwarfing the Times Autumn's Promise *. These weren't merchant ships or patrol craft. These were warships, built for destruction. "Hail them," Do-yun ordered. "Tell them we're a diplomatic vessel on authorized passage." Mira tried. Her fingers danced across the communications panel. She tried again, and again. "Captain! They're jamming us. I can't get through." The bridge lights flickered. Something hit their shields, not hard enough to breach them, but enough to send a clear message. "Warning shots. Evasive maneuvers," Do-yun said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Get us out of here." The helmsman pushed the engines, but it was pointless. The Thessarian ships moved with terrifying precision, cutting off every escape route. Another shot struck the shields, this time harder. The ship shuddered. Sparks flew from one console. "Shields at 60%, Mira reported. "Captain, we can't fight these ships. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." Do-yun knew she was right. The Thessarians had ruled this sector for 50,000 years. Humanity had barely been in space for a few centuries. This wasn't a fight they could win. "Stand down," he said quietly. "Power down weapons. Lower shields." Ambassador Park grabbed his arm. "Captain, what are you doing?" "Saving your life," Do-yun replied. "And everyone else's on this ship." The bridge went silent. The crew followed his orders, powering down their defensive systems. It felt like surrender. And perhaps it was. But it was also survival. The Thessarian ships stopped firing. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the Times Autumn's Promise Times shook as docking clamps locked onto the hull. They were being boarded. Do-yun activated the ship-wide communication. "All hands. This is the captain. We are being boarded by Thessarian forces. Do not resist. Gather in the main hangar." "That's an order." He led the way, walking through the corridors with his crew behind him. Mira stayed at his side, her hand near her sidearm but not touching it. Smart. She was ready, but not threatening. The hangar doors had been forced open. Thessarian soldiers poured inside, tall figures in armor that looked like it grew from their bodies, rather than being worn. They had multiple eyes, arranged in clusters around their heads, and their skin had a chitinous quality that reminded Do-yun of insects. Though these beings were anything but simple, the human crew gathered together, surrounded by alien soldiers. Do-yun counted his people quickly. Everyone was accounted for. No one was hurt. Yet, the Thessarian soldiers parted, creating a pathway. Someone else was coming. She was unlike anything Do-yun had ever seen. Where the soldiers were imposing, she was magnificent. Taller than the others, her chitinous skin bore patterns of deep violet and silver. She wore robes that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. Multiple sensory appendages emerged from her head like a crown. Every soldier stood straighter in her presence. A translation device on her chest spoke in clear English. "I am Queen Velrith, supreme ruler of the Thessarian Empire. Her actual voice created harmonics that human ears couldn't fully process, but the translation was perfect. Doyun stepped forward. He wouldn't hide behind his crew. I am Captain Han Doyun, of the United Earth Coalition. This is a diplomatic vessel. We have permission to travel through this space. The Queen moved closer, studying him with those clustered eyes. It felt like she was looking through him, rather than at him. Your species is new here. Unregistered. You travel through our territory without proper introduction. She tilted her head. That is dangerous for creatures as fragile as you. We meant no offense, Ambassador Park said, stepping forward. We were invited to negotiations. We were invited to negotiations. Velrith's gaze didn't leave Doyun. Invited by merchants and traders. Not by me. Not by those who rule. She circled him slowly. I decide what happens to trespassers in my space. The hangar felt colder. Doyun's crew stood frozen, waiting to see what would happen next. The Thessarian soldiers had their weapons ready, though not actively aimed. The message was clear. One wrong move, and this would end badly. Before I decide your fate, Velrith said, stopping in front of Doyun, I would know who stands before me. What is your designation? Captain of Humans. Doyun met her alien gaze without flinching. I am Captain Han Doyun, of the United Earth Coalition. The effect was immediate and shocking. Queen Velrith's body went rigid. Her violet skin drained of color, turning an ashen gray that spread from her head down to her body. The transformation took only seconds, but everyone saw it. Even the Thessarian soldiers recoiled, clicking to each other in their native language. Their queen was afraid. That terrified them. Doyun, Velrith whispered, her translated voice actually trembling. Yes, Doyun said, confused by her reaction. Do you know me? The queen took a step backward, then another. Her attendants moved to support her, though she waved them away. She stared at Doyun like he was a ghost, risen from the dead. Withdraw, she ordered her soldiers. Now, everyone back to the ships. Your Majesty? One of the commanders questioned. Now. The force of her command made the translator crackle with distortion. The Thessarian soldiers obeyed instantly, retreating toward their boarding craft. The queen followed them, but she stopped at the hangar door. She looked back at Doyun, and even through the alien features, he could see something like fear mixed with wonder. You should not exist, she said softly. He told me he had no family. He told me he was alone. Who? Doyun demanded. Who told you that? But Velrith was already gone, disappearing into her ship. The docking clamps released. Within minutes, all 6 Thessarian warships jumped into slipspace, leaving the Times Autumn's Promise Times floating in the void. The hangar was silent. Doyun's crew stared at him, waiting for an explanation he couldn't give. Lieutenant Kang Mira was the first to speak. Captain, what just happened? Doyun looked down at his hands, as if they might hold the answer. I don't know, he admitted. But we're going to find out. The Times Autumn's Promise Times limped into Station Kyoto 3 days later. The nearest coalition outpost wasn't much to look at, just a cluster of modules connected in orbit around a dead moon. But it was safety. Doyun filed his official report with Earth Command, though he left out his confusion about the Queen's reaction. How could he explain something he didn't understand? He couldn't sleep that night. The Queen's words echoed in his mind. Asterisk. He told me he had no family. He told me he was alone. Asterisk. Who was she talking about? The only family Doyun had ever known was his father, and Han Taejin had died when Doyun was 12 years old. An industrial accident on Mars colony. Quick and ordinary. Nothing mysterious about it. Except now, maybe there was. Lieutenant Kang Mira found him in the station's observation lounge at 0300 hours. She carried 2 cups of terrible coffee and sat down without asking permission. Can't sleep either? She asked, handing him a cup. Too many questions. Do-yoon admitted. He stared out at the stars. The queen knew my name, Mira. Not just knew it. She was afraid of it. Afraid of me. Why? Mira sipped her coffee and made a face. I've been thinking about that. She said. He told me. She was talking about someone specific. Someone connected to you. My father's been dead for almost 30 years. Are you sure? Mira asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them. Do-yoon wanted to dismiss it, but he couldn't. Too many things didn't add up. The queen's reaction. Her fear. Her words about family. I want to look into it, Mira said. Into your father's death. If that's okay with you. Do-yoon nodded slowly. Do it. Use whatever resources you need. Do it. They started with official records. Han Tae-jin had been a cargo supervisor on Mars Colony, Station 12. The accident report was straightforward. Equipment failure, explosive decompression. Body recovered and cremated per his wishes. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would explain an alien queen's terror. But Mira kept digging. She had a background in xenolinguistics and knew how to access alien databases that most humans didn't know existed. She found references in old Thessarian archives, fragments that mentioned something called the Pale Ghost. Look at this, she said, showing Do-yoon her screen. The translation was rough, but readable. This is from 40 years ago. During the Thessarian Vrykol War, Do-yoon leaned closer. I've never heard of the Vrykol. Neither had I. Mira pulled up more files. They were another empire, just as powerful as the Thessarians. They fought a war that lasted centuries, but 40 years ago, the Vrykol Empire collapsed. Just ended. In less than a year. What destroyed them? Mira's expression was strange. According to these records, a ghost. They call it the Pale Ghost. Something that appeared during the final year of the war and turned everything around. It fought for the Thessarians, but it wasn't Thessarian. Do-yoon read through the fragmented reports, stories of a warrior in strange armor who could infiltrate impossible locations, a pilot who flew ships like they were extensions of his body, a tactician who understood warfare better than generals who had lived for thousands of years. And everywhere in the records, one detail repeated. Pale. The warrior's skin was pale. Unlike any Thessarian. This is insane, Do-yoon muttered. You're saying this ghost was human? 40 years ago? We hadn't even made official contact with aliens yet. Official contact, Mira emphasized. But what if there were unofficial operations? Black Ops missions we don't know about. Oh, she pulled up another file. This one. From Earth Coalition archives. It was heavily classified. But Mira's access codes got them through. Special Operations Unit Black Star. Deployed 38 to 42 years ago. Mission parameters classified. Recordin 42. 1. All operatives listed as Kia or missing. Do-yoon's hands shook as he scrolled through the names. There were 12 of them. The 11th name made his heart stop. Asterisk Sergeant Han Tae-jin. Status: missing in action. Date: 40 years ago. Asterisk. It's not possible, Do-yoon whispered. This has to be someone else. Same name, different person. Mira pulled up a photo. Even degraded by time and classification protocols, the face was unmistakable. It was Do-yoon's father, 20 years younger, wearing a military uniform Do-yoon had never seen. The room felt too small. Do-yoon stood up, pacing. If this is real, if my father was this pale ghost, why didn't he tell me? Why did he come back and pretend to be a cargo supervisor? Maybe he couldn't tell you, Mira suggested gently. Black Ops missions stay secret for a reason. Do-yoon's mind raced through his childhood memories. His father had been quiet, often distant. But there were moments, times, when Tae-jin had taught him things. Games, he'd called them. Moving through obstacles silently. making quick decisions under pressure. Hand-to-hand combat techniques disguised as roughhousing. At the time, Do-yoon had thought his father was just being playful. Now, he wondered if it had been training. "There's more," Mira said. She pulled up a visual record from the Thessarian archives. The image was degraded, corrupted by time, but it showed a figure in human combat armor. The suit was old by current standards, but the design was unmistakably human. Earth Coalition markings covered the shoulder plate. The figure stood on a battlefield surrounded by Thessarian soldiers. They weren't fighting him. They were cheering, celebrating. This was taken after the Battle of Vrykol Prime, Mira explained. The final battle of the war. The one that ended everything. According to Thessarian records, the Pale Ghost assassinated the Vrykol Emperor and destroyed their command structure, single-handedly. Do-yoon stared at the image. He tried to imagine his father, the quiet man who had read him bedtime stories and taught him to fix engines, doing what these records described, ending a war between galactic empires, becoming a legend. "If all this is true," Do-yoon said slowly, "why did the queen react the way she did? Why did she leave instead of—" He stopped. Instead of honoring him? If he saved her people, wouldn't she want to thank his family? The only— And Hafam, Mira was quiet for a moment. Maybe she was honoring him by leaving, by not involving you in whatever's happening. Before Do-yoon could respond, an alert flashed across Mira's screen. Incoming message. Encrypted with old coalition military codes. Codes that hadn't been used in decades. Mira worked to decrypt it. When the message appeared, it was simple and direct. Asterisk, to Captain Han Do-yoon, from Queen Velrith. Request immediate meeting. Neutral ground. Coordinates attached. Come alone. We must speak of your father. Asterisk. Do-yoon read it 3 times. She wants to meet. It could be a trap, Mira warned. Maybe. Do-yoon stood up straighter. But it's also the only way I'm going to get answers. Prep a shuttle. You'll monitor from orbit. If anything goes wrong, you get out of there and warn Earth Command. And leave you behind, if necessary. Do-yoon managed a weak smile. Someone once told me that someone has to stand, even when it's dangerous. Do-yoon managed dangerous. Do-yoon managed a weak smile. 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 Mira frowned. Who told you that? Do-yoon looked at the image of the pale ghost on the screen. I think my father did. I just didn't understand it at the time. 24 hours later, Do-yoon's shuttle approached the coordinates. An abandoned moon station floated in the void, ancient and forgotten. A single Thessarian ship waited there, small by their standards. No weapons active, no escort vessels. As promised, Queen Velrith was keeping this meeting quiet. Do-yoon docked his shuttle and stepped into the station. The artificial gravity was weak, and the air tasted recycled and old. Emergency lights provided dim illumination. His footsteps echoed in the empty corridors. He found her in what had once been an observation deck. Queen Velrith stood alone, looking out at the stars. Without her attendants and soldiers, she seemed smaller, more vulnerable. Her skin had returned to its normal violet color. But when she turned to face him, Do-yoon saw something in her alien features he hadn't expected. Sadness. Captain Han Do-yoon, she said softly. Thank you for coming. I know you have questions. I owe you answers. I owe your father more than I can ever repay. Queen Velrith gestured to a makeshift seating area. The furniture looked ancient, salvaged from the abandoned station. Do-yoon sat across from her, studying the alien ruler who had shown such fear at hearing his name. In this dim light, without the grandeur of her court, she looked tired. How old was she? Thessarians lived for thousands of years. She could have witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. You want to know why I reacted the way I did? Velrith said. It wasn't a question. When you spoke your name, I saw a ghost. I thought I was seeing someone who should not exist. My father, Doyun said quietly. Han Tae-jin. Yes. Velrith's multiple eyes closed briefly, a gesture of remembrance. 40 years ago. My empire was dying. The Vrikol had pushed us to the edge of extinction. We had fought them for 3 centuries. And we were losing. Our colonies burned. Our fleets scattered. Our people faced annihilation. She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. Then, a human appeared. Alone. In a small ship. Barely capable of sustained flight. He contacted our military command and offered his services as a mercenary. We thought it was a joke at first. One alien, from an unknown species, offering to fight in a war that had consumed billions of lives? But you accepted, Doyun said. We were desperate. Velrith turned back to him. And your father was persuasive. He provided tactical analysis of the war that surpassed our best strategists. He identified weaknesses in Vrikol formations that we had never noticed. He offered a demonstration of his combat skills against our elite soldiers. They couldn't touch him. Anbi, Doyun tried to imagine it. His father, the quiet man who had worked in cargo warehouses, fighting alien warriors. It still felt impossible. Tae-jin became our weapon, Velrith continued. But he was more than that. He was our hope. He fought in battles where survival was impossible. And he survived. He infiltrated Vrikol strongholds that had never been breached. He flew our ships better than pilots who had trained for centuries. But it wasn't just his skill that impressed us. What else was there? Doyun asked. His character. Velrith's voice softened. He fought honorably. When Vrikol soldiers surrendered, he took them prisoner, instead of executing them. When Vrikol civilians were caught in war zones, he protected them. He refused orders that would have won battles, but cost innocent lives. Some of my commanders thought him weak. I knew better. He was strong in ways we had forgotten. She pulled up a holographic display from a device on her wrist. Images appeared in the air between them. Battlefields. Explosions. And in the center of it all, a figure in human combat armor, moving through chaos with impossible grace. This is from the siege of Vrikol Prime, Velrith explained. The final battle. The Vrikol Emperor commanded their forces from a fortress moon. Impenetrable, we thought. No force in the galaxy could breach those defenses. Tae-jin went alone. The hologram showed the fortress, a massive structure bristling with weapons and shields. Then the perspective shifted, following a single armored figure as he moved through the outer defenses. Doyun watched his father work, and it was like watching poetry written in violence. Every movement precise, every decision perfect. Tae-jin didn't just fight. He flowed through combat like water, finding paths around obstacles. He disabled their shields from the inside, Velrith said. Then he made his way to the command center. The Vrikol Emperor had a personal guard of 300 elite warriors. Tae-jin fought through all of them. The hologram showed the final confrontation. The Vrikol Emperor was massive, twice the size of a human, covered in biological armor. The fight lasted 17 minutes. Doyun watched his father dance with death, moving faster than seemed possible, striking at weak points that shouldn't have been visible. When it ended, the Emperor lay dead, and Tae-jin stood over him, barely able to stand himself. He destroyed their command nexus, Velrith said, their entire communication network. Their fleet fell into chaos. Without the Emperor's coordination, they couldn't fight effectively. Within weeks, the war was over. Your father saved my people from extinction. Doyun's hands trembled. He'd spent his whole life thinking his father was ordinary, a cargo supervisor who died in an accident. Now, he was learning the truth. His father had ended a galactic war. What happened after? Doyun asked. Velrith dismissed the hologram. I offered him everything: citizenship, lands, titles, wealth beyond measure. He refused it all. He said he didn't fight for reward. When I asked why he fought, he said something I've never forgotten. Because someone has to stand against extinction. Because the strong protect the weak. Because it's right. Do-yun recognized those words. His father had said similar things when Do-yun was young. Little lessons wrapped in bedtime stories. At the time, they'd seemed like simple moral teachings. Now, Do-yun understood they were the philosophy of a warrior who had lived them. He asked only one thing, Velrith continued. That we forget humanity existed. He said your people weren't ready for the galaxy yet. You needed time to grow, to develop, to become strong enough to stand as equals. We honored that request. We erased records. We avoided human space. We waited. Until now, Do-yun said. Until merchants and traders made contact, without understanding the history. Until you appeared in my space, speaking that name. Velrith's skin shifted colors slightly, displaying emotion Do-yun couldn't interpret. I swore an oath to your father. Any debt owed to him would be honored forever. Any bearing his name would be as family to the Thessarian throne. When I heard you speak, I thought I was hallucinating. Taejin told me he had no family. He said he was alone. He lied. Do-yun said softly. I was born 2 years after he came back to Earth. My mother died when I was young. He raised me alone until he died. He didn't die, Velrith said. Not 40 years ago. What happened to him? End quote. Industrial accident, 12 years ago, on Mars. Do-yun's voice was hollow. At least, that's what I was told. Now I wonder if anything I know about him is true. They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Velrith spoke again. There's something else you need to know. The Vrykol weren't destroyed, only scattered. They fled to the dark spaces between empires, hiding, rebuilding. My intelligence network has been tracking them. Do-yun felt cold. Are they coming back? They already are. Velrith's eyes focused on him intently. And they know about humanity now. They've learned that the pale ghost was human. They'll want revenge, Captain Do-yun. Not just on your father's memory, but on his bloodline, on his people. We're not ready, Do-yun said. You know that. Our technology is centuries behind theirs. I know. Velrith stood and walked to a storage compartment built into the wall. She opened it and removed a sealed case. It bore Earth Coalition markings, old ones, from 40 years ago. Your father left this in my care. He said if any of his family ever found me, I should give it to them. I thought it would never happen. I thought he had no family to find. She handed him the case. It was heavier than it looked. Do-yun ran his fingers over the seal. His father's thumbprint was required to open it. What's inside? He asked. I don't know. It's keyed to his genetic signature. Only someone related to him by blood can open it. Velrith stepped back. But I suspect it's his way of protecting you. Taejin was many things, but above all, he was a protector. If he left something behind, it's because he knew you would need it. Do-yun pressed his thumb to the seal. It recognized his genetic markers, close enough to his father's. The case clicked open. Inside, he found several items arranged carefully. A personal recording device, data chips, a weapon that looked like a hybrid of human and Thessarian technology, and a star chart with coordinates marked in his father's handwriting. One word was written next to the coordinates. Sanctuary. I need to go, Do-yun said, standing up. Thank you, Queen Velrith, for telling me the truth, for honoring your oath to my father. The debt is not paid, Velrith said firmly. Your father saved my people. I will protect his son and his species. When the Vrykol come, you will not stand alone. The Thessarian Empire stands with humanity. Do-yun bowed, a gesture of respect. Velrith returned it. a formal acknowledgement between equals. As he turned to leave, she called out one more time, "Captain Do-yoon, your father was the finest warrior I ever knew. But more than that, he was a good man. I hope you know that. I hope you know that." "I'm beginning to," Do-yoon replied. "I'm beginning to understand who he really was." The case sat on the table in Do-yoon's quarters aboard the Times Autumn's Promise *. Lieutenant Kang Mira and Ambassador Park Ji-han stood on either side of him, waiting. The ship was back in friendly space, docked at Station Kyoto. But Do-yoon felt more unsettled than ever. Everything he thought he knew about his father had been a lie. Or maybe not a lie, just an incomplete truth. "Are you sure you want us here?" Mira asked quietly. "I need witnesses," Do-yoon said. "Whatever's in here, it's bigger than just me. My father left this for a reason." He opened the case fully. The recording device sat on top. It was old technology, the kind used 40 years ago, before modern quantum storage. Do-yoon picked it up carefully, feeling the weight of it. His father had held this, had recorded something meant for family he claimed he didn't have. Do-yoon activated the device. A hologram flickered to life, and suddenly Han Tae-jin stood before them. He looked younger than Do-yoon remembered. Maybe in his early 30s. He wore the same military uniform from the classified photos. But his expression was tired. Sad. "If you're watching this," his father's voice said, "then I'm gone. And you've met the Thessarians. I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth. Sorry for the lies. Sorry for leaving you alone." Do-yoon's throat tightened. Hearing his father's voice after so many years felt like a knife in his chest. "My name is Sergeant Han Tae-jin, Special Operations Unit Black Star. 42 years ago, Earth Coalition Intelligence detected a massive war happening in this sector. The Thessarian Empire versus the Vrykul sovereignty. Both civilizations were ancient, powerful, and completely unaware that humanity existed. If either of them discovered us too soon, we would become collateral damage. Or worse, a strategic resource to be exploited." The hologram showed star charts, battle reports, tactical analyses. Tae-jin had done his homework before volunteering. Command needed someone to intervene, to make sure the right side won, and to keep humanity's existence secret until we were ready. It was a suicide mission. No backup. No extraction plan. One person, trying to influence a galactic war. Tae-jin smiled sadly. "I volunteered. I was young and stupid, and thought I could make a difference." "You did," Do-yoon whispered to the hologram. "I spent 5 years fighting that war," Tae-jin continued. "I did things I'm not proud of. Killed people who were just following orders. Destroyed ships, with thousands of lives aboard. But I also saved millions. Protected civilians. Turned the tide against an empire that would have conquered everything, including Earth eventually. The Thessarians won. I made sure of it. And then I came home." The hologram shifted. Now Tae-jin looked directly at the camera, directly at Do-yoon. "I came back to Earth because I wanted a normal life. I wanted to forget the war. I met your mother, fell in love, and for a few years, I was happy. Then she died, and I had you, and I realized I'd made a terrible mistake." Do-yoon leaned forward. "What mistake?" As if answering him, Tae-jin said, "The Vrykul weren't destroyed. I shattered their empire, killed their leadership, but I didn't finish them. I thought I had. I thought it was over. But intelligence reports started coming in years later. The Vrykul were regrouping in the dark spaces between empires, and they were looking for me. For the Pale Ghost. For revenge. For the Pale Ghost. Wuksam. Revenge." Mira glanced at Do-yoon, concern in her eyes. The Queen had warned them about this. "I knew they'd find humanity eventually," Tae-jin said. "And when they did, they'd remember me. They'd want to hurt what I cared about. So, I made preparations. I built something in secret. A place called Sanctuary. Coordinates are in this case, along with access codes and everything you'll need. The hologram showed images of a hidden installation. Ancient asteroid stations, modified with human and Thessarian technology. Weapons. Ships. Resources. Sanctuary contains everything I learned fighting the Vrykol, Tajin explained. Their tactics, their weaknesses, their technology. I also stockpiled weapons, created training programs, built prototypes that combine human engineering with alien technology. If the Vrykol come for Earth, you'll need every advantage. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. Son, I know you're angry with me. I know you deserved better than a father who was distant and secretive. But everything I did to protect you. To give you a future where you could live free, not as a slave or a victim. I fought so you wouldn't have to. Doyun felt tears on his face. He didn't wipe them away. But I know the galaxy doesn't work that way, Tajin continued. Every generation faces its own darkness. I'm sorry I left you to face yours. Use what I've left behind. Trust the Thessarians. They honor their debts. And remember, someone has to stand, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's what it means to be human. The hologram flickered and died. The room was silent. Ambassador Park spoke first. This changes everything. I need to contact Earth Command immediately. This intelligence, these resources, the alliance with the Thessarians, this is beyond my authority. Do it, Doyun said. But carefully. My father kept this secret for a reason. If word gets out about Sanctuary, every power in the galaxy will want it. Over the next few hours, they examined the contents of the case. The data chips contained detailed intelligence on Vrykol, technology, tactics, and culture. The weapon was a marvel of engineering, combining human projectile weapons with Thessarian energy systems, and the coordinates pointed to a location deep in an uncharted asteroid field. Lieutenant Kang Mira studied the data chips with growing concern. Captain, look at this. These attack patterns. I've seen them before. Remember those raids on frontier colonies last month? The ones Command thought were pirates? Doyun looked over her shoulder. His blood ran cold. The attack patterns matched perfectly. The Vrykol are already here. Blood. 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 They're testing us, Mira said, probing our defenses, learning about our capabilities. These weren't random pirate raids. They were reconnaissance. 60s. Ambassador Park returned, his face pale. I've reported to Earth Command. They want the intelligence from Sanctuary immediately. They're also... He hesitated. They're divided. Military Command wants to weaponize everything. Diplomatic Corps wants to leverage the Thessarian alliance. Intelligence Directorate wants to keep everything classified. You're caught in the middle, Captain. Doyun wasn't surprised. Politics never changed, even on a galactic scale. What about the Vrykol attacks? Did you tell them? I did. They're escalating military readiness across all frontier zones. But Captain, Park looked uncomfortable. They want you to lead the mission to Sanctuary. You're the only one with genetic access to your father's systems. Before Doyun could respond, the station's alarms began blaring. Red emergency lights flooded the corridors. Mira's communicator crackled to life. All hands. This is Station Kyoto Command. We have unknown vessels emerging from slipspace. Multiple contacts. Weapons hot. This is not a drill. Doyun ran to the nearest monitor. The display showed 6 ships, sleek and deadly, surrounding the station. They didn't match any known design in Coalition databases, but Doyun recognized them from his father's files. Vrykol warships. How did they find us? Park gasped. Mira was already working her console, pulling up tactical data. They're hailing us. Audio only. I'm putting it through. A voice filled the room, translated by automatic systems. It sounded like grinding metal and breaking glass. But the words were clear. Humans. We know you harbor the bloodline of the Pale Ghost. Surrender, Captain Han Do-yun, or we will destroy this station and everyone on it. You have 10 minutes to comply. Do-yun's hands clenched into fists. The Vrykol had tracked him here. They wanted revenge for what his father had done, and they were willing to kill thousands of innocent people to get it. Captain, what do we do? Mira asked. Do-yun thought of his father's words. Asterisk. Someone has to stand. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Asterisk. He looked at the station's population counter. 3,000 people lived and worked here. Families. Children. People who had nothing to do with a war fought before they were born. Get a team together, Do-yun said. Take a fast ship to those coordinates. Find sanctuary. Get the intelligence and resources back to Earth Command. What about you? Mira demanded. Do-yun picked up his father's hybrid weapon, feeling its weight. I'm going to buy you time. Someone has to stand. Remember? That's suicide. Park protested. Maybe. Do-yun managed a smile. Or maybe I'm my father's son. Either way, you need to go. Now. That's an order. Mira looked like she wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. She saluted sharply. Don't die, Captain. We need you. I'll do my best, Do-yun promised. Now go. You have 8 minutes. Station Kyoto's defense center was chaos. Officers shouted orders. Screens showed the 6 Vrykol warships holding position around the station. The station commander, a grizzled veteran named Colonel Hwang Junho, looked up as Do-yun entered. Captain Do-yun, Junho said grimly. They're asking for you by name. What the hell is going on? Long story, Do-yun replied. How long can you hold them off? Junho laughed bitterly. Hold them off? Captain, our weapons are designed for pirates and smugglers, not military warships. We have maybe 5 minutes before they tear through our shields. If they wanted to destroy us, we'd already be dead. They want something. You. I know. Do-yun studied the tactical display. His father's combat data was flooding back through his mind. Information he hadn't known he'd learned. Those childhood games hadn't just been games. They'd been lessons. His father had trained him without him even realizing it. Give me access to station defenses. What are you planning? Buying time. Do-yun's fingers moved across the controls. He pulled up the station's defensive grid, its weapons systems, its structural weak points. He saw the battlefield the way his father must have seen it. Not as a hopeless situation, but as a puzzle to solve. How many people can we evacuate? Armin. Maybe 1,000 if we had an hour. We don't have an hour. Then we fight. Do-yun activated the station-wide communication. This is Captain Han Do-yun. All civilian personnel, move to the core sections. All security personnel, arm yourselves and report to defensive positions. We are under attack by hostile forces. Follow emergency protocols. He switched to a private channel. Mira, are you away? Her voice crackled through. Just cleared the station. ETA to Sanctuary is 40 minutes. Captain, please tell me you have a plan. Working on it. Get those resources and get back here. We're going to need them. Do-yun. Cut the connection before she could argue. The Vrykol hailed again. This time, visual came through. The alien that appeared on screen was nightmare made flesh. Its body was covered in sharp, angular armor that looked grown rather than worn. Multiple limbs ended in blade-like appendages. Its eyes were cold and calculating. Time is up, human. Will you surrender? Do-yun met those alien eyes without flinching. I am Captain Han Do-yun, son of Sergeant Han Tae-jin. If you want me, come and take me. The Vrykol's expression twisted into something that might have been a smile. Bold. Like your father. He also chose death over surrender. We granted his wish. Now, we grant yours. The transmission cut. The Vrykol ships opened fire. Station Kyoto's shields flared to life, absorbing the first volley. But Doyun could see they wouldn't hold long. He had minutes at best. He activated the tactical systems his father's data had taught him to see. The Vrykol ships were powerful, but they followed predictable patterns. Military doctrine. From an empire. Thousands of years old. They expected humans to fight like every other species they'd encountered. Doyun wasn't going to do that. Colonel Junho, fire all defensive batteries at these coordinates. He transmitted targeting data. Not at the Vrykol ships, but at empty space between them. That's nowhere near them, Junho protested. Trust me. Fire now. Junho gave the order. The station's weapons discharged, sending plasma bursts into empty space. The Vrykol ships didn't even bother evading. Why would they? The shots had missed by kilometers. Then Doyun triggered the secondary command. The plasma bursts detonated, creating electromagnetic interference that scrambled Vrykol sensors. For exactly 4 seconds, their targeting systems went blind. 4 seconds was all Doyun needed. He redirected the station's remaining power to the defensive shields, creating a rotating pattern that made it impossible for the Vrykol to find a weak point. When their sensors cleared and they fired again, their shots scattered harmlessly. How did you do that? Junho demanded. My father fought these things for 5 years. He learned their patterns, taught them to me without me knowing. Doyun was already planning the next move. They'll adapt. We need to keep changing tactics. Never let them predict what we'll do next. The Vrykol ships adjusted their formation, spreading out to surround the station completely. They were learning. Doyun studied their movements, seeing the strategy beneath. They were hurting the station, limiting its options. Then something unexpected happened. New contacts appeared on the sensors. Big ones. Doyun's heart leaped as he recognized the energy signatures. Thessarian warships. 6 of them emerged from slipspace, matching the Vrykol numbers. At their head was Queen Velrith's flagship. The communication channel opened, and her voice filled the defense center. Captain Doyun, I swore an oath to your father. His family would never stand alone. The Thessarian Empire honors its debts. The Vrykol commander hailed both stations simultaneously. Velrith, this is not your concern. The humans killed our emperor. We claim blood debt. Your emperor started a war that would have consumed the galaxy, Velrith replied coldly. The pale ghost ended it. He saved countless lives, including those of your own civilians. If you want revenge on his bloodline, you go through me first. The Vrykol hesitated. Even they didn't want to fight the Thessarians again. But pride and anger won out. So be it. Your empire will burn with the humans. The battle erupted. Vrykol and Thessarian warships exchanged fire, weapons tearing through space. Doyun watched the tactical display, seeing patterns in the chaos. The Thessarians were good, but the Vrykol had learned from their defeat. They adapted quickly, using tactics the Thessarians hadn't seen before. They're going to lose, Doyun said quietly. The Vrykol learned from last time. They're ready for Thessarian tactics. Then what do we do? Junho asked. Doyun pulled up his father's combat data again. There had to be something. Some weakness. Some pattern he could exploit. And then, he saw it. The Vrykol ships, coordinated through a central command vessel. If that ship went down, the others would fall into chaos. But the command ship was at the center of their formation, protected by the others, unreachable, unless someone got creative. I need a ship, Doyun said. Something fast and maneuverable. And I need it now. Junho stared at him. You're not? Seriously? Planning to? Mira's team found sanctuary, Doyun interrupted. A message had just come through. They're loading the prototype ship with equipment and heading back. ItHFY. 20 minutes. We just need to hold until then. 20 minutes? Junho looked at the battle. 2 Thessarian ships were already heavily damaged. We'll be dead in 10. Not if I keep them busy. Doyun headed for the docking bay. Keep the station alive, Colonel. That's an order. The fastest ship available was a courier vessel, lightly armed but incredibly agile. Doyun strapped himself into the pilot's seat, his father's hybrid weapon secured beside him. As he launched, information flooded his mind. Flight patterns, evasive maneuvers, attack vectors. His father had taught him all of this through those childhood games, encoding combat knowledge into muscle memory. Doyun flew into the battle. A Vrykol fighter broke off to intercept him. He banked hard, using thrust vectors in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The Vrykol fired. Doyun rolled, and the shots missed by centimeters. He returned fire, targeting the fighter's engines. Direct hit. The Vrykol ship spiraled away, disabled. Captain Doyun, Queen Velrith's voice came through his communicator. What are you doing? What my father would do, Doyun replied. Finishing the fight, he pushed his ship toward the Vrykol command vessel. More fighters intercepted him. Doyun danced between them, moving on instinct and training he'd never known he had. Shots flew past him. He returned fire, each burst carefully calculated. He didn't waste ammunition. Every shot counted. The command ship loomed ahead, massive and bristling with weapons. It was suicide to approach it. Doyun approached it anyway. Then help arrived. A ship unlike anything Doyun had ever seen burst from slip space. Sleek, deadly, combining human engineering with Thessarian technology. Lieutenant Kang Mira's voice filled his cockpit. Sanctuary's prototype is incredible, Captain. And we brought friends. The prototype ship was followed by dozens of combat drones, all programmed with Han Taejin's tactical knowledge. They swarmed the Vrykol fighters, buying Doyun the opening he needed. Mira, I'm going for the command ship. Cover me. Always, sir. Doyun pushed his courier to maximum speed. The command ship's point defense systems opened fire. The small ship shook as impacts hammered its shields. Warning alarms screamed. Doyun ignored them all. He was committed now. 50 meters from the command ship's hull, Doyun launched his father's hybrid weapon, modified with an explosive charge. Then, he pulled up hard. Every thruster firing. The courier barely cleared the command ship's superstructure. Behind him, the weapon struck true. It penetrated the hull and detonated inside the command center. The Vrykol command ship's lights flickered. Its weapons went silent. And slowly, it began to drift. Without coordination, the other Vrykol ships fell into confusion. The Thessarians pressed their advantage. Within minutes, the remaining Vrykol vessels were retreating into slipspace, abandoning the fight. Doyun's courier limped back to Station Kyoto, shields gone, and systems failing. He docked manually and stumbled out of the cockpit. Mira was waiting for him. That was insane, she said. That was necessary, Doyun replied. Someone had to stand. Queen Velrith's image appeared on a nearby screen. Captain Doyun, you fight like your father. I have never been more honored to call someone an ally. Thank you, Your Majesty. And thank you for honoring your oath. The debt is not paid, Velrith said. This was only the beginning. The Vrykol will return with greater numbers. But when they do, they will face not just the Thessarian Empire, but humanity as well. Together, we will stand. Days later, the formal alliance was signed. Sanctuary became humanity's first shared military installation with an alien civilization. Captain Han Doyun was promoted to commander and given leadership of a new joint defense force called the Pale Guard, named in honor of his father. In Sanctuary's memorial chamber, a statue of Han Taejin was erected. Doyun stood before it, Mira at his side. The old hologram activated, his father's digital legacy speaking one final time. Every generation faces its own darkness, son. I'm proud you faced yours. I'm not alone this time, Doyun said to the hologram. That's the difference. That's what you taught me. Humans are strongest together. The hologram smiled. That's humanity. We don't fight for glory or conquest. We fight to protect. And we never abandon those who stand with us. That's why the galaxy will never defeat us. Doyun saluted the statue. Around him, crews of humans and Thessarians worked side by side, preparing for whatever came next. His father had stood alone and saved an empire. Doyun wouldn't have to stand alone. He had allies, friends, a purpose. Somewhere in deep space, Vrykul forces regrouped. They would face something they'd never encountered. Humanity at its finest, united with allies who shared their values. The Pale Ghost's legacy wasn't just in the battles he'd won. It was in the future he'd made possible. A future where his son could stand not as a lone warrior, but as a leader of many. And that made all the difference.